Hey there, nostalgic TV lovers! Welcome back to Star Spangled Nostalgia, where we dive deep into America's golden years and uncover the forgotten disasters that shaped our television landscape. Picture this. It's 1984. Ronald Reagan is in the White House. MTV still plays music videos, and everyone's talking about this new show called The Cosby Show. But while Bill Cosby was becoming America's dad, television executives were green-lighting some of the most spectacular disasters in TV history. We're talking about shows that had everything: big budgets, famous stars, proven concepts, but crashed and burned faster than a DeLorean without a flux capacitor. These weren't just canceled shows, folks. These were television train wrecks that make you wonder what network executives were thinking. Today, we're counting down 10 forgotten TV shows from 1984 that were supposed to be the next big thing, but became cautionary tales gathering dust in television's Hall of Shame. But before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps our channel grow, and drop a comment letting me know which of these shows you actually remember watching. Now, let's travel back to 1984 and explore 10 TV shows that made us appreciate the good ones just a little bit more. Number 10, The Series, the squandered sci-fi franchise. Starting at number 10, we have the most heartbreaking failure of 1984, The Series. The original V miniseries in 1983 was television gold, capturing 40% of the viewing audience. It had compelling characters, amazing special effects, and a genuinely creepy premise about reptilian aliens disguised as humans who wanted to harvest us for food. So NBC executives thought, how can we turn this gripping, finite story into a weekly series? And that's where everything went horribly wrong. The series premiered October the 26th, 1984, and fans immediately knew something was off. Gone was the tight, focused narrative. Instead, we got what critics called a mess of meaningless melodrama. Budget constraints were brutal. Same explosion footage recycled every week. Characters from the miniseries either got killed off randomly or mysteriously disappeared. The series limped along for 19 episodes before NBC mercifully put it out of its misery. They didn't even air the 20th episode. The lesson? Sometimes a perfect miniseries should stay a miniseries. Number 9, Akea Pablo, Norman Lear's cultural misfire. At number 9, we have a show that should have been a home run, but became a painful reminder that even television legends can strike out spectacularly. Akea Pablo was created by Norman Lear, the genius behind All in the Family and the Jeffersons. The show starred comedian Paul Rodriguez as a Hispanic stand-up comic balancing his career with his traditional Mexican-American family. On paper, this sounds like exactly the kind of groundbreaking television Lear was famous for. But by 1984, America's appetite for television had changed. The social relevant sitcoms of the 1970s were no longer what audiences wanted. Instead, viewers were flocking to The Cosby Show and Family Ties, idealized families offering normalcy and beauty rather than confrontational humor. AKA Pablo premiered March 6, 1984, and ranked 56th with a 14.8 rating. Really bad when there were only 3 major networks. ABC pulled the plug after 6 episodes. TV Guide later ranked it 45th on their 50 worst TV shows of all time list. The tragedy wasn't that it was bad. It was the wrong show at the wrong time. Television had moved on from the style of humor they were creating. Number 8, Blue Thunder, the failed big screen adaptation. Number 8 is Blue Thunder, proving Hollywood's obsession with turning movies into TV series doesn't always work. The 1983 movie was successful. Roy Scheider piloting a high-tech LAPD helicopter with lots of action and gadgets. The show premiered January 6, 1984, with the same premise: super advanced police helicopter fighting crime in Los Angeles. But Blue Thunder had one fatal problem. It premiered the same year as Airwolf. When it came to helicopter shows, Airwolf absolutely dominated with its Cold War fantasy and supersonic military chopper. Blue Thunder relied too heavily on the helicopter rather than developing compelling characters. Every episode felt the same. Bad guys cause trouble, helicopter shows up, bad guys get caught, repeat. Blue Thunder was canceled after 11 episodes, while Airwolf ran for 4 seasons. The lesson? Being first doesn't matter. Being better does. If you're adapting a movie for TV, you need more than just expensive special effects. Number 7 takes us to Paper Dolls, a primetime soap set in New York's fashion world, starring Morgan Fairchild, Lloyd Bridges, and young Nicolette Sheridan. 1984 was the golden age of primetime soaps. Dynasty and Dallas were ratings juggernauts. Paper Dolls should have been a natural fit with beautiful people, glamorous settings, and plenty of romance and betrayal opportunities. But you're not just competing with other new shows. You're competing with viewer loyalty built up over years. The real killer was ABC's complete lack of confidence. Throughout its brief run, Paper Dolls was repeatedly preempted by baseball playoffs. Think about this from a viewer's perspective. You're trying to get into a new soap opera that depends on following ongoing storylines, but you never know when it's actually on, because it keeps getting bumped for sports. Paper Dolls was canceled after 13 episodes, leaving unresolved cliffhangers. It's a textbook case of a network setting up its own show to fail through poor scheduling. Number 6. Glitter, Aaron Spelling's empty formula. At number 6, we have Glitter, and this stings because it came from Aaron Spelling, the man behind The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and later Beverly Hills 90210. Glitter was set behind the scenes of a celebrity magazine. It sounds like it should have worked. Celebrity culture, behind-the-scenes drama, beautiful people doing exciting jobs. But Glitter suffered from Aaron Spelling formula fatigue. By 1984, audiences recognized when they were being served a reheated version of something they'd already consumed. The show felt like a carbon copy of The Love Boat or Hotel, but without the inherent charm. A cruise ship is automatically glamorous. It's a floating party. But a magazine office? Even a celebrity magazine office? That's just an office. ABC lost confidence so quickly that after only 6 episodes, they moved the remaining episodes to late night opposite The Tonight Show during Christmas week. Glitter was canceled December 18, 1984, proving even Aaron Spelling's golden touch had limits. Number 5. Call to Glory, the action drama that lost its way. At number 5, Call to Glory perfectly illustrates why it's important to know what your audience wants and actually give it to them. This period drama centered on Colonel Rainer Sarnak, a U.S. Air Force pilot, and his family navigating early 1960s political tensions. The pilot episode focused on the Cuban Missile Crisis, with Craig T. Nelson flying spy planes and being heroic. Initial viewer reaction was positive, especially among military veterans who appreciated seeing Air Force life portrayed respectfully. Then the series went in a completely different direction, focusing more on domestic family life and the loneliness of Colonel Sarnak's wife, rather than the high-stakes military drama that had attracted viewers. This creative shift was a massive miscalculation. Viewers wanted Craig T. Nelson flying spy planes and dealing with Cold War intrigue, not arguing about household problems. Call to Glory was canceled after 1 season, proving you need to stay true to your original premise. Now, let's take a quick breather. We're halfway through our countdown, and I have to ask, are you remembering any of these shows? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you're enjoying this trip down television's memory lane, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Number 4, The Duck Factory, Jim Carrey's expensive misfire. Coming in at number 4, we have The Duck Factory, And this one hurts because it featured a young Jim Carrey in his first lead television role. Yes, the same Jim Carrey who would go on to become one of the biggest comedy stars of the 1990s, with movies like Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber, got his start on one of 1984's most spectacular television flops. The show was produced by Lorne Michaels, fresh off his legendary run creating Saturday Night Live, so you'd think it would have comedy gold written all over it. If anyone understood what made television comedy work, it was the man who discovered and developed talent like John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Eddie Murphy. Carrey played Skip Tarkenton, a young animator trying to save a failing animation studio that produced a cartoon called The Dippy Duck Show. The premise actually sounds pretty promising when you think about it. Behind-the-scenes look at the animation industry, Jim Carrey's incredible physical comedy and impressionist skills, insider jokes about the television business, and the kind of workplace ensemble comedy that had worked for shows like WKRP in Cincinnati. Jim Carrey was already displaying the manic energy, rubber-faced expressions, and spot-on impressions that would eventually make him famous. Even in this early role, you could see glimpses of the comedic genius that would eventually take Hollywood by storm. His physical comedy was already impressive, and his ability to completely transform himself through voice and movement was evident. But the Duck Factory suffered from a severe identity crisis that plagued it from the very first episode. The show couldn't decide if it wanted to be a workplace sitcom about the animation industry, a dramatic show about the struggles of a dying business, or a sketch comedy showcase designed specifically to highlight Jim Carrey's unique talents. The biggest problem was the tone, which was all over the place and completely inconsistent from episode to episode. The show dealt with serious subjects: people losing their jobs, a dying industry, financial struggles, and the death of artistic creativity in the face of corporate greed, but then tried to treat these genuinely serious issues with traditional sitcom humor, complete with a laugh track that felt completely out of place and tonally inappropriate. Imagine watching someone get fired from their dream job and then hearing canned laughter. It was jarring, uncomfortable, and made viewers feel like they were watching the wrong show or like the producers didn't understand the material they were working with. Lorne Michaels himself admitted in interviews that he was a little vague about what the show was supposed to be, telling reporters, "I don't know what the recipe is." When the executive producer and creator doesn't know what kind of show he's making, you know you're in serious trouble from a creative standpoint. The show premiered April 12, 1984, and almost immediately, both critics and audiences could tell something was fundamentally wrong. The episodes felt like a mishmash of sketches, workplace comedy, and dramatic moments that never quite gelled into a coherent vision or consistent entertainment experience. The ratings were absolutely brutal, some of the worst in television history. The Duck Factory became the lowest rated of 94 television shows from the 1983 to 84 season. Think about that for a minute. Out of nearly 100 shows on television, this was dead last in the ratings, which is almost impossible to achieve unless you're doing something seriously wrong. NBC canceled the show after 13 episodes, and it disappeared from television history so completely that most people don't even remember it existed. The only reason anyone talks about it now is because Jim Carrey went on to become famous. Otherwise, it would be completely forgotten, like so many other failed sitcoms from the era. The lesson here is that even with talented people involved, a show needs a clear creative vision and consistent tone. You can't just throw comedy talent at a confused script and expect it to work. Jim Carrey would prove his comedy genius just a few years later with shows like In Living Color, but The Duck Factory was definitely not his finest hour. Number 3. Hot Pursuit: The Saturday Night Sacrifice. Number 3 on our countdown is Hot Pursuit: And this show's failure is a perfect example of how bad scheduling decisions can kill even a decent premise before it has a chance to find an audience and build the kind of loyal following that keeps shows on the air. Hot Pursuit starred Carrie Keane and Eric Pierpoint as a married couple forced to go on the run after the wife is framed for murder by corrupt officials. It's basically The Fugitive, but with a married couple instead of just one man, which could have been an interesting twist on a proven formula that had already worked successfully in both television and movies. The show had some genuinely compelling elements. The husband and wife team brought a different dynamic to the fugitive genre, with storylines about how being on the run affects a marriage and how couples work together under extreme stress. The chemistry between the leads was good, and the action sequences were well produced for television standards of the time. But NBC made a scheduling decision that was basically a death sentence for any show, regardless of quality. They put Hot Pursuit on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. in direct competition with two other brand new action shows, Cover Up on CBS and Finder of Lost Loves on ABC. Now, let me explain why this was such a catastrophically bad decision from a business standpoint. Saturday night at 10 p.m. is already television's notorious graveyard shift. Most people in the target demographic are out living their lives rather than sitting at home watching TV. You're already working with a significantly smaller potential audience than you would have on almost any other night of the week. But then, NBC decided to create a three-way battle for that already small audience that was home on Saturday night, essentially guaranteeing that none of these shows would get the ratings they needed to survive and thrive. This is the exact opposite of smart counter-programming, where you put your show against something completely different to avoid direct competition. Instead of putting Hot Pursuit against something completely different, like a comedy or a variety show that would appeal to a different demographic, NBC essentially created a scenario where three similar shows targeting the same audience would cannibalize each other's viewership. And that's exactly what happened. Hot Pursuit ranked a weak third in its time slot, behind both Cover Up and Finder of Lost Loves. NBC finished third for the entire night, which was embarrassing given how much money they'd invested in these new shows and how much promotional effort they'd put into launching them. The show premiered September 22, 1984, and was essentially dead in the water from the very first episode due to these scheduling problems. The ratings were so consistently bad that NBC pulled it from Saturday nights and moved it to Friday nights, desperately hoping to find an audience somewhere in the schedule. But by then, it was too late. Viewers had already moved on to other shows, and the damage to the show's momentum was irreversible. Hot Pursuit was canceled on December 19, 1984, after just 11 episodes, proving that sometimes even decent television can't overcome terrible strategic decisions. The show might have actually found an audience if it had been given a better time slot and not forced to compete directly with two other shows targeting the exact same demographic. This is a textbook case of network executives making scheduling decisions that doom their own shows before they even have a chance to succeed. Number 2, Pryor's Place, The Celebrity Mismatch. At number 2, we have Pryor's Place, a show that perfectly illustrates why star power alone cannot save a fundamentally flawed concept, no matter how talented or well-intentioned the people involved might be. This was Richard Pryor, one of the greatest comedians of all time, a comedy legend who influenced an entire generation of performers, starring in a children's television show. Yes, you heard that right. Richard Pryor, the king of R-rated comedy, was hosting a show designed for kids. The series was produced by the legendary Sid and Marty Krofft, the puppet masters behind classic children's shows like H.R. Pufnstuf, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, and Land of the Lost, so it wasn't like they didn't know how to make quality children's television. These guys were masters of their craft. with decades of experience creating shows that kids genuinely loved and parents could feel good about. And Pryor was undeniably talented. His comedy genius was never in question. He had a natural warmth and charisma that came through even in his most adult-oriented material. And when he chose to dial down the profanity and adult themes, he could be genuinely charming and relatable. But from the very beginning, CBS affiliates across the country were nervous about Pryor as a children's host. And honestly, you can understand their concerns. This was a comedian whose stand-up routines were filled with profanity, adult themes, stories about drug addiction, and observations about some of society's darker aspects. His public struggles with substance abuse were well documented and frequently covered in the media, and his comedy persona was about as far from kid-friendly as you could possibly get. The show premiered September 15, 1984, and despite genuinely good intentions and educational content that actually was appropriate for children, it faced an uphill battle from day one. While critics praised the show's positive messages about friendship, self-esteem, and education, parents were understandably confused about whether this was appropriate viewing for their kids. The bigger problem was direct competition from a show that was perfectly designed for the same audience. Pryor's Place was scheduled against Mr. T, an animated series based on the A-Team star that was already hugely popular with kids. Mr. T had everything going for it. A recognizable action hero that kids already loved from the A-Team, colorful animation that was visually appealing, and a built-in audience from the show's massive success. Despite winning several awards and receiving critical acclaim for its educational value and positive messages, Pryor's Place struggled with modest ratings throughout its entire run. The show lasted only one season, producing 13 episodes before CBS canceled it. The tragic irony is that Pryor actually was genuinely great with kids when he put his mind to it. His natural charisma and warmth came through on screen, and the show did have positive messages about education, friendship, and believing in yourself. But the fundamental mismatch between Pryor's adult comedy persona and the requirements of children's television created a cognitive dissonance that audiences, both parents and kids, couldn't quite get past. Parents weren't sure if they should let their kids watch, and kids were more interested in the flashier, more action-oriented programming that was available. It's a perfect example of how celebrity casting can backfire spectacularly when the celebrity's established image doesn't match the role they're being asked to play. Number 1. Cover Up, remembered only for tragedy. Finally, at number 1, Cover Up would be completely forgotten if not for one of television history's most tragic accidents. Cover Up was an action-adventure series about a fashion photographer and special forces soldier posing as models while working as secret agents. Pure 1980s cheese, beautiful people, exotic locations, fighting international criminals. But Cover Up's place in television history has nothing to do with plots or ratings. On October 12, 1984, John Eric Hexum was playing with a prop gun loaded with blanks during a filming break. Thinking it was harmless, he put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger as a joke. Blank cartridges can be deadly at close range. The wadding and hot gases fractured his skull, causing massive brain damage. He died 6 days later at age 26. Hexum's death shocked Hollywood and led to major changes in prop gun handling. After his death, the character was replaced by Anthony Hamilton. The show continued but was canceled in April 1985. Cover Up would have been another forgotten action show if not for this tragedy. Instead, it stands as a sobering reminder of how dangerous television production can be and how quickly carelessness can turn deadly. Conclusion. And there you have it. 10 forgotten TV shows from 1984 that were supposed to be the next big thing, but became cautionary tales about television's unpredictable nature. Looking back, you can see common threads: identity crises, poor scheduling, oversaturation, celebrity mismatches. But the most important lesson is that success in television is never guaranteed, no matter how much money you spend or how many famous people you hire. These shows failed for different reasons, but they're all largely forgotten, while The Cosby Show and Murder, She Wrote from the same year are still remembered fondly. But that doesn't mean they were worthless. Each failure taught the television industry valuable lessons about what works and what doesn't. So which of these forgotten flops do you remember? Were you brave enough to watch any during their original runs? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into TV's forgotten failures, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on for more nostalgic journeys through America's television history. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with friends who love television history. Until next time, this is Star Spangled Nostalgia, reminding you that sometimes the best stories come from the shows that didn't quite make it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.